What if this whole thing, existence, wasn't some grand gift, but just a cosmic screw-up? What if the universe we live in is just the botched handiwork of some incompetent, even malevolent god? Well, that is the dark, challenging, and frankly, utterly fascinating world of the philosopher M Cioran, a guy who stared right into the abyss and then wrote down exactly what he saw. And that one line, boom, that's the key to his entire way of thinking. For Cioran, the whole idea of humanity's original sin is just a cheap copy of a much bigger, much more fundamental crime. The problem isn't us. The problem is that we exist at all, in a universe that he believes never should have been created in the first place.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, we need to meet the villain of the story. And no, we're not talking about the kind, all-powerful God you might be familiar with from most religions. Cioran's culprit is, well, he's a bungling second-rate creator he calls the Demiurge.
So yeah, for Cioran, the whole story of existence isn't some epic fall from grace. It's more like a cosmic crime scene. And at the heart of it all is this flawed creator, this cosmic screw-up who's responsible for, well, all our suffering, our failings, and just the general brokenness of the world.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Cioran kind of splits the idea of God in two. On one hand, you've got this supreme God. He's good, sure, but he's also totally useless, anemic, Cioran says, completely powerless to actually do anything. And then you've got the Demiurge. He's the one who actually rolled up his sleeves and made the universe. The problem is, he's this wicked, miserable, and totally incompetent being. And he's the one we have to thank for all our world and all its problems.
But, and this is a classic Cioran twist, he calls this botched job creator the most useful God who ever was. Why? Why on earth would he say that? Because he's the perfect scapegoat. Think about it. We can blame him for everything. Every failure, every bit of bad luck, all our own flaws, we can just point up and say, hey, it's his fault. He lets us all off the hook.
Okay, so this whole idea of a flawed creator, it leads right into Cioran's really sharp take on history and religion. He basically thinks we made a huge mistake when we went from having lots of gods to just one.
And just look at the difference he points out. With polytheism, with all the Greek and Roman gods, it was like a buffet. It reflected how messy and contradictory we all are. Feeling angry? There's a god for that. Feeling creative? There's a god for that too. But monotheism, Cioran sees that as a prison. It forces all our complex, messy human impulses into one narrow channel. And for him, that creates this pressure cooker of aggression and dogma, a kind of tyranny that makes life feel, as he puts it, unbreathable.
And that quote really nails it, right? We were more normal when we had more options. Cioran isn't saying monotheism didn't make us deeper in some ways, but he's saying it came at a huge cost. We became deeper by becoming narrower. We basically traded this wide-open field of human experience for a single, rigid path, and in his view, we lost a huge part of our freedom in that deal. So, let's recap. We've got a universe that's a mistake and a history that's a prison. Where does Cioran go from there? He brings it all the way down to the most personal level imaginable, our own bodies. And yeah, for him, the body isn't some temple. It's a cage, a prison made of flesh. He even described himself as a grave digger infected with metaphysics. I mean, what a line. It's this idea that he can't just see the surface of things. He's always looking underneath, seeing the decay, the rot that's built into life itself. For him, our flesh isn't just something that dies eventually. It's a fraud from the very beginning, an incurable nothingness.
And he makes this really stark comparison. The flesh, it's a disease, an anomaly, a total fraud. It's all the messy, painful, distracting stuff. But the skeleton? The skeleton is different. That's the real deal. It represents solidity, seriousness, even a weird kind of peace. It's the honest-to-goodness truth of what we are, stripped of all the illusion.
Okay, so if the universe is a mistake and your body is a prison, what do? Where's the escape hatch? Well, Cioran being Cioran, he goes straight for the most extreme, the most radical answer you can think of.
He takes the whole idea of suicide and just flips it on its head. I mean, we're all taught to see it as a moment of weakness, right? A total failure. Cioran says, hold on. What if it's the exact opposite? What if it's the ultimate show of strength? An act of pure agency? A way of looking at this flawed creation and saying, nope, I'm out. I reject your terms.
And this is so important to his argument. For him, it's not an act of insanity. It's an act of too much sanity, an unendurable lucidity, as he calls it. It's what happens when you see the world and your place in it with such horrifying clarity that you just can't stand it anymore. It's the ultimate rational decision, in his view.
He even calls it a sudden accomplishment, a lightning-like deliverance. It's this wild idea that you're not surrendering to death, you're beating it to the punch. You're showing that you're in control. It's his concept of nirvana by violence, a shocking and, frankly, a very disturbing idea, but it's central to his thinking, a way to seize your own end.
But it's not all doom and gloom. There is another way out in his philosophy, and this one doesn't involve a physical act. It's a philosophical escape, a way to find some kind of peace while you're still alive.
And he calls this the void. Now, when you hear the void, you probably think of some scary black abyss, right? But for Cioran, it's different. It's nothingness transfigured, an abyss without the vertigo. It's basically reaching a state of mind where you fully, deeply understand that none of this is real. And that understanding is what sets you free.
So the real salvation in Cioran's world doesn't come from faith in something. It comes from seeing through everything. It's about getting to a point where you can actually rejoice in the fact that it's all unreal. Because once you get there, all the attachments, all the anxieties, all the things that torture us, they just fall away. You're not saved by God. You're saved by nothingness.
And this is where he leaves us, with this incredible, chilling paradox. You understand that nothing is real, and in that moment, you're saved, you're free. But you're also miserable forever, because this salvation doesn't come with happiness or comfort. It's just a cold, hard, unshakable truth. And it really makes you wonder, is that a kind of freedom that's even worth having?